Hi, this is George Lees talking once again to Sean Maguire. We're now, it's the 26th of September today, and we're going to talk about how the social media are obfuscating my work. I'm going to try and explain that to Sean, and we're going to be revealing why they are obfuscating it. That is the British Royals running the slaving trade into Carolina in America, where the massive weather storms have occurred in the last fortnight, and in Scotland, because those videos have been blocked, I tried to upload them on September the 18th, but they've never been viewed until today, and even today they have copyright those videos. So Sean's going to introduce his show, and then we'll get on with the story. Okay, so
welcome to Out of the Bag. This is Sean Maguire live on Healing Oracle Radio and People's Internet Radio, and this is in fact a pre-recorded interview, the 26th of the 9th 2018. It will be going out next week on the 3rd of October, but I've been trying to get hold of George Lees since Friday. We were due to do an interview on Friday. George, you're with me now. Welcome to Out of the Bag. What happened?
So the British Royals, I did not know it until the day we were due to talk, but I immediately made a video on it, and they were uploading that video quite happily. I was doing it both on Facebook and on YouTube. The Facebook version has completely disappeared, and they have been much more liberal than YouTube, but I think they must now be working together. As soon as I start an upload, what usually happens is that my internet access crashes in the middle of the upload, but this week they've been really ruthless. When I got to within 2 seconds of actually publishing it, the internet access disappeared, and that now appears on my if you look at my Facebook wall this morning, you will see I've published an image. The title of the video that they blocked with 2 seconds to go was RAC, British Royal Slave Trade, Weather Storms, Elephant and Castle, PISO and PISO in Carolina, and Charles II with the pineapple. He was the first man to grow a pineapple in England after they had executed his Catholic dad. All of it is the biggest cause of death, and the PISO family are behind everything that happens in Carolina, and only this week have I discovered it. So the RAC stands for the Royal African Company, and it's slaving mainly out of Ghana into Carolina, where the massive harbours are, and they were selling off the people. And if you watched the news last night, you'll see that a black man is now in trouble as a rapist in America. I can't mind his name, but he was getting persecuted all over the telly for raping people in his relatively innocent life. I can't remember the name of the character because I was watching that in Witherspoons.
I don't know it either, George. But,
all right, yeah.
So if you'd have had an innocent name to the video, to the YouTube upload, it might have gone uploaded.
No. They're able to make their decisions retrospectively. It still has had. I have not published it yet, and if you only I can see what they are intending to do with it. So what it's. I've not pressed the publish button yet, and I've written a thumbnail for it, and the story and the explanation of where the slaving took place and how it is linked to PISO. And they had massive weather storms as I was making it, and we've had massive weather storms in Scotland. I reckon if you've had it in Ireland, but we've twice had to close the bridge across the River Forth because the winds are in danger and knocking the buses into the ocean.
Well, actually, last week, John Moran was supposed to be my guest live at 9 o'clock, and unfortunately his electricity power went out, and he was told it wasn't going to be coming on until 10 p.m. the following day. So I went live myself at 9 o'clock to repeat an interview I did with John Moran from 2017. And at 9 o'clock, I was halfway through my theme tune when my power went out as well. The whole power went out.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what to do. I phoned up. The telephone lines were still working. I phoned up the ESB and found out that it wouldn't be until 8 o'clock the following day that I would get power back. So I thought that was the end of it. About 5 or 10 minutes to 10 o'clock, which was only less than an hour later, my lights came back on again. So me being me, I went live and just went late, you know. So I started at 10 o'clock and went on till 1 o'clock rather than 12.
Yeah. So the stuff I've discovered about Bose Lion and everything that have I talked to you about Cavendish?
You did a video on Cavendish, but we haven't discussed it. I think that's what the interview was going to be about on Friday.
Yeah, so Cavendish is the middle name of the Duke of Westminster, whose sister has gone missing with dementia in the Crewe region where he has his massive mansion. And his sister is the Duchess of Roxburgh, and that is my feudal landlady, as it were, because she's the divorced Duchess of Roxburgh that has been replaced by the relatives of Sir Alec Douglas Home in the castle that is the dominant feudal landlord for me since a woman called Kersdale came across from France, and all of them are linked into the concubines for Charles I and Charles II that launched the slaving trade into America.
Right.
And that is first generation Catholic, beheaded, yeah, with the acorn joke all in the movies that the BBC make about it. And that is the massive link of the acorns to the pagan cult that I've told you about again and again and again. And all over the stories that I'm learning now, the acorn is part of the massive pistic. So that's why every pope wears the shell for the acorn on their head.
Okay.
Do you get it? So that's the acorn is out. You turn the I can't remember what you call the little
Skull.
The scalp that it pops into. That is the papal hat.
They use that in Jewish religion as well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so Bill Clinton, on the death of Shimon Peres, the whole lot of the sad bastards were sitting there with all of that. And if you remember, Arius Piso was a Jew, and he wrote the Bible, and it's the biggest piss take in world history, and all of it leads to that violence and the need to keep it secret. We could be civilized in a fortnight were it not for folk like Higgins and the Pope. Yeah, all of it is just a massive, massive Muppet show, and the world is better than that, and that's why they are panicking now, because I've discovered that I made trips to Bose Lion country and to try and find the home of Ogilvie this week. That is the King George V was married to Princess Alexandria of Russia, and she's still alive in this mansion that I cannot find. It's taken me 2 days to search for it. I've made loads of new friends in the time that I was searching, and all of it is so when I got to the little village which did not contain the home of Ogilvie, I went into a pub and I sat down with the punters, and they started to talk about the history of the country. And when I said, where do the Ogilvies live? In a castle called AIRLIE, and they just said to me, oh, that's Glams and one of the nicknames. And one of the guys that was sitting on the stool said, we had members of that family living here too. And he said, I was their chauffeur, and their name was Keizer. Did you know that Kaiser Wilhelm is the grandson of Queen Victoria.
Yes, you have mentioned that before.
So all of that is the massive Germanic, Austro-Hungarian links to those absolute fascist families that were Hohenlohe, and they are actually linked to Lennox and all the Brudenell families that become the concubines for Charles I and Charles II. And Louise of Kerrsdale, that is the Duke of Roxburgh's ancestor, is part of that. All of them are from Normandy, and they came here in the Norse conquest, and then they became the concubines. And the reason for religion is simply divide and conquer.
Absolutely.
All the way through. So one of the guys sitting in the bar stool in this ordinary working man's vent, they were really humorous and I really enjoyed it. I'm going to go back to see them soon.
Okay.
He proclaimed that he was the chauffeur for a man called James Keizer, and that is the same bloodlines, and that is the descendants of Queen Victoria, and that is the stammering king's wife, who is Bose Lion with the word Cavendish in her name. She's Cavendish Bentinck, and if you remember the Goon Show, there's one of them in
Michael Bentinck.
Yeah, not the most political person that you would ever have imagined, but that is how the Star Wars team works, and that's why it's failing to work now, and all of it. So, did I tell you about the Leslies of Fife?
No, go on.
So Leslie of Fife is a massive warlord in the 30 Years' War, and so he was a field marshal for Sweden, and I've now got that on the screen. There he is, Alexander Leslie, 1st Earl of Leven. And when you learn that there is a Leslie in Ireland, you remember the significance of the Alexander name in religious history?
Oh, go on, remind me.
So that is the name of the very first 10 of the Piso popes. 2 of them were Pope Alexander. And that's why Katy Perry, with the initials for Calpurnius Piso, makes the movie about getting married to Alexander, and he runs away from the wedding celebration, and all of it is the same family jokes. So Alexander Leslie is the 1st Earl of Leven, and that is a place, massive mansions called Balgony, and I went down to try and find them on the Fife coast yesterday, but none of it is left. There are no mansions, there is no history, just a series of buffoonish, so I had my dinner in a caravan site, and that is the place where King Alexander III of Scotland, as they were carving it up, that's way back in medieval days, in the 12th century I think, and that is the diaspora of the Piso family into Europe and the launch into every constituency in our countries of their ancestors into the political roles. And that for the Queen of England is the Dukes of Buccleuch, the Earls of Douglas, the baronets of this, that and the other, and they are all over the whole of the British jurisdiction is in the hands of the Piso family relatives. And there is one in Ireland, let me just find him, and he, in his bloodline, when you go down, you find a Bullingdon boy, and I told you briefly about that. Can you remember which Bullingdon boy it was?
What, Cameron?
No, so they are Leslie of Monaghan, or however you pronounce it. How do you pronounce that?
Monaghan.
So Monaghan, that is the name of my sister's earliest boyfriends in Kelso, and I did not know that there was a county Monaghan, but they are the Leslies of Irish religious trouble in County Monaghan, and on their bloodline is David Dimbleby.
Oh,
Did I not tell you that just in the lead up to?
no, you didn't. I was wondering where you were going with that.
I was quite stunned. He just all of a sudden he popped up with his image on the family tree. I don't know if I can find that in the time that we have, but
no worries for that.
That is the covers for the Leslies of Fife fighting for the Swedes as a field marshal in the 30 Years War, Christian versus Christian. And if there are any pagans left, they get topped just in due course. And that is the topic of the last Valley movie, and that's Michael Caine again, who was at Rupert Murdoch's wedding. And the last Valley movie is set in Trins in Austria, and Michael Caine is burning the last of the pagans and the last of the witches. And ironically, the hero in that film is Omar Sharif, and he is the person that was the bad guy in the Lawrence of Arabia movies and all the you mentioned Bolsheviks in one of our earlier videos. I think Omar Sharif was part of that story in Russia, and all of it is impacting on me and my career, because Omar Sharif played bridge with my next in line boss at Otago University, and his name is David Jones of the Netherlands. And that is the Netherlands that are the massive religious mobsters, and they have launched now the god of annihilation, and that is Tyrannus.
Yeah.
And
Omar Sharif was a professional backgammon player, wasn't he?
He used to play bridge
Okay.
with David Jones in Auckland, and I've got all the Rothschild's director numbers in all the scams, and that's the same David Jones that also turned out to be a scamster. I loved him. He's a really generous guy, but all of them can afford to be.
Right.
Yeah. Massive links to, and the whole of that Otago, the professoriate, all of it is totally corrupted. You've got Barclays, you've got Tuckers, that's the banking dynasties, and right through it, it's all the same families that rule the world. And that's why they sacked me, because they knew in the end. I've met a fabulous occultist woman. She understands reading the future. And I've never had such a fascinating conversation with anyone as I had the other day. And do any of you guys know how that happens? You know,
what? Ethnicity?
Well, there's all sorts of mythology about it. You put ashes in a pot and suddenly the story is revealed. Or you've got a water jar and everybody is looking down on that. And some of them you just use tarot cards like my wife used to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm now fascinated by the concept of reincarnation. And I think I might have talked to you about that before.
You have very briefly, but you know.
So loads of my students are in the Blackett Mafia of Newcastle. They no longer talk to me for fear of the gods. Yeah, because they are on Commoner Kate's side. That is part of how they get her onto the throne.
Right.
And I've told you many times that she's a goldsmith. And every one of my students that went to New Zealand with me are members of the Blackett Mafia for the Middleton family. And when you look at their websites, they proclaim that the leading people that are in the websites, and I think Princess Sophie of Wessex is part of the family tree, and when they get reincarnated, they give you the dates and the details and the name of that person at that time. And when you put something like that on Facebook, all of the sad bastards that are in the syndicate then panic. I've never created more havoc than I did. I wrote to Adam Errington, who was one of my loyal students, used to suck up to me all the time. All of them are massive linkages to the corrupted monarchy and how it stays the monarchy through all of that corruption story. But you don't understand how the future gets read.
Not really, no. I mean, there's many ways of doing it, you know.
Right.
I have friends that use pendulums. In fact, on the show that I'm going to have this interview on, I'm going to have Gary Peter Carlson on, and he uses the sway to answer questions and pendulum to predict, etc. So, you know, people use their different ways, different methods, even to this day, and from the tarot cards right the way through to rune stones, etc., etc.
So the Leslies of Ireland, I just discovered, and it was the same search, but I'm now back, wow, Dimbleby of Ireland. And there is the picture of Captain Jack William Leslie. So the 30 Years' War, you remember the significance of Sweden and Field Marshal Ing in Queenie's armies?
Okay, you did mention it.
Yeah, so that was in the couple of videos back. But I found Dimbleby right in the middle of the bloodline for Leslie, and there he is on my screen now. Let me just see if the camera can see that.
Just into my listeners that unfortunately we've just got audio, not visuals.
So he was 1938, he was born, and he's in that Leslie of Monaghan bloodline, and all of it is intertwined. The news and the names for the Scottish participants in the 30 Years' War are all intertwined with the names for the people that are the owners of the world. Because the Dimblebys, have you seen the interview where Boris Johnson is accused by David Dimbleby of being a Bullingdon boy, and Boris went ballistic, and he immediately stood up and pointed at his chest and poked him in the chest and said, "You are a Bullingdon boy, 2 generations of your family, your father too." And that is the dad that used to wander around the death camps in Europe. Yeah, if you look up Dimbleby and Bergen-Belsen, you'll see that they're scaremongering right through it, and they are the folk that come to the wedding celebrations of the killing of the wife of the soon-to-be king, Prince Charles. And on it goes, and I've told you about the shin and how you've got the right as a British royal to execute your wife if you don't like her.
Yeah. Isn't it? So the Kaiser family's intervention into Europe created our royal family, basically.
Yeah. So let me see if I can find. So the man that was the Kaiser in the tiny little village of Newtile, yeah, and when I was sat on the bar stool eating my toastie the other day, the man made me nearly choke on it, because he said in the mansion that owns this village, the boss was the Kaiser, and he was Kaiser, Sir James Kaiser, and all of them become the Kaiser Foundation all across America, and none of them have passed on. They just pass it down and pass it down. And if this woman is correct, every now and again they reincarnate one of the really powerful members of the lineage. And you should see the number of body doubles for Edward VII that are wandering around with their girlfriends and wives, because that is the murderer of Marcus Manuel, and that is the person that was the parent of Winston Churchill that gave him the royal blood that Greg Hallett told us all about, and that is how Winston got the royal blood, and that is why he was used to sire the Queen of England and Bill Clinton. Have I told you those stories?
You have, yeah, but I don't mind you repeating them or expanding on them. But you're telling me that this lady told you that they reincarnate a previous member of the family.
Oh yeah, so we were on to another discussion. She was the person that took me around the place looking for the residence of the AIRLIEs, and that is Princess Alexandra. She's still alive. I'd love to visit the place and see how they live, but all of it is such well kept secrets, because that is the Queen Mother's mother. It's absolutely amazing how the whole of the populace, who are directly related to them as body doubles, yeah, the prima nocte thing is real. It's not just a story in the Gladiator, the Braveheart movie. It is real. It's a policy that was launched by the family that is. He was the procurator when I was in the divorce proceedings, and I was accused of violent actions the night my writ dropped through my door. The whole of the pub was fighting. It was the night Wales beat Scotland 55-0. There was a massive fight in the pub, and I got prosecuted and convicted for I can't remember what the accusation was, but I'm effectively a felon for that reason. That was the night that Wales beat Scotland 55-0. The whole.
Were you in the fight, George? Were you in it?
No, I was talking to a woman about the ambulance and their role in wartime and peacetime, and her boyfriend was the person that gave the evidence that I assaulted her.
Wow.
Yeah, and all of them regret it now, because all of them get pathologies, and it's just amazing how the whole lot of them have climbed down, and many of them have passed on or have gone blind already. Yeah, and that's why I believe in the gods so much. And they fear me now. It's just amazing. And sadly it's happened to my best friends, because they're claimants to the English throne.
That's something you need to explain. A few people got a little bit offended, I'm not saying who they are either, by mentioning the gods rather than God. Okay, so would you explain yourself there? When you say you believe in the gods, is there a higher power above them, or
I don't believe that any human being, until they pass on and get to the pearly gates, which may just be a myth too. Yeah. I'm a biologist. I obey the biological rules as much as I can, and I'm very careful to avoid syphilis so far. Yeah. But all of it is, yeah, so why did they get right? You see, that is the PISO divide and conquer methodology.
Yes.
And if somebody comes up with a brick in their hand and belts me when I visit Ireland at any stage, that is the PISO triumph. It's the same if I get belted by an Islamic man with a flower pot man's helmet on his head, because that is the joke about Gallipoli.
Okay.
Yeah, that is the fair.
Well, you'll never get belted by a guy with a brick in his hand.
So I don't believe that any human being can. I believe that there are gods because of everything that happens in my life every day, and I cannot explain it, because it's every time you see somebody drop something in a public place, and you look at the face, suddenly it becomes clear, because my knowledge of history is so great, and because all of the body doubles are being sent to see me, they tend to come and see me the day before I research them, and that was a little bit confusing for a while, but that's why I'm asking you, how do they read the future? And I believe that the gods will be able to read the future too, because they effectively, I believe that it's like a massive chess game for them. Okay. And that is, I believe, is why they, in the Jason and the Argonauts movie, there is a team of gods, and that is one of the most inspirational films I ever made. But tell your Irishman that the god Zeus, yeah, can you remember who played him?
I can't remember who played him in the movie, but I do remember the movie. They were sitting up in the clouds chatting about what was going on and moving the children around and moving Jason and the boat and the different, I suppose, all the different tests they were put through by the gods.
So the god Zeus is Niall McGuiness of Irish alcoholic fame. Yeah, and if you mix the two things...
McGuinness as in the Guinness, the drink? Or
yeah, absolutely. And I've made videos the 6 weeks before Martin McGuiness dropped dead with his blood cancer. I made the videos on the Irish issues that are the launch of the Battle of the Boyne and the triumph of the German kings in those battles, and then William of Orange and everything that happens. And that is why the Pisos are winning. If your mates do not believe that the deities, Arius Calpurnius Piso's name is, he's the Father God. Just explain that massive piss take to them, and they will probably not back off, but they'll get a gun license and try and track me down. That is how it works.
Well, the Romans, you know, we have Roman Catholicism, and the Romans, if you look at a bit of history, they believed in various gods, similar to the Greeks.
Yeah. So it's, have you heard of the Fotheringay family?
Now the name rings a bell, go for it.
So when Queen Mary was beheaded, the Fotheringays were the people that took her prisoner. She was held prisoner in Loch Leven, which is very close to Leslie of Leven's territory. That is Leslie that has the equivalent in Ireland, but he's in Leven in Scotland. And that is the Levines that are now in charge of Hearts Football Club. And that is the Hearts Football Club that was asset stripped by the man that has Rothschild in his middle name. He's Tsar Nikolaevich Romanov Rothschild. Yeah, and that is the asset stripping of Hearts Football Club, and all of it is religious. When I think I said to you, Ireland's too small to have Catholic and Protestant affiliations in every city. Right. I think you laughed at that and you said, "Oh no, we've got it."
Well, we do have it, but not as much as Northern Ireland or Scotland.
Yeah. So the Fotheringays, have you heard of Colin Montgomery?
The sportsman.
Yeah, the golfer.
Yeah.
So the Montgomerys are, as you now know, the mountain from the molehill that is Montanus, that is the nickname for Piso, like the Father God. And on it goes, and that is why Queen Mary had to be murdered by the Protestant replacements, and all of it becomes a massive joke. And her executioner team include Gordon Bowden used to rant to me about a woman. So the current head of Tory Scotland is. Do you know the names?
No, I'm waiting for you to pull them from your head.
So she the current woman is the replacement for Keiza Dugdale, who's related. She's the seventh Cameron, as the seventh cousin of David Cameron. He's the boss at the Tories. She's the boss of Labour in Scotland. Until I started to send messages to her on Skype asking for an interview on the basis that she is directly descended from Stalin.
Wow.
Yeah, she's Dugashvilli. She's Keiza Dugdale, and that is Dugashvilli for Stalin, who is actually married to Rothschild, and that is the people that live in Ramsgate that are Moses Montefiore. And now the Montefiores are the official historians for Stalin's history. Yeah, and that is Stalin's in the Rothschild cigar tube to begin with. So is Chiang Kai-shek. So is, and the Bose-Lions are the lineage, and I think I've told you this before, for Kim Jong-il in North Korea.
Right.
Right at the top of his family tree, you've got Bose-Lion with a hyphen, but it's spelt different.
And where the Theresa May...
So the Fotheringay,
Right,
they were the people that committed Queen Mary to execution, and they have now purchased the Lochleven Levine mansion, and that is the leave-in place for the person that is Leslie of Leven, and that is the serial killer in the 30 Years' War, who was the Field Marshal for Sweden, who were the biggest killers in that war, and that is the launch of the ING families, and Sally Magnusson is on the Swedish bloodline, and her name is, I forget what it is, but they're in the still game comedies. Do you get that in Ireland?
What's that?
It's a still game is a Scottish comedy.
With Ramsay Nesbitt and all them.
Yeah, that's right. And it is the Jamesy Souter are the Soters of Egypt, and there's a Bobby character that's the barman in the pub, and he is in the bloodline for Bjelbo, and that is the Swedish families that Magnusson is in.
Okay.
And Sally is just a blonde bimbo, but it is not a coincidence that for 30 years she presents songs of praise, because that is false religion out of Sweden and the mass massacres of everybody that was pagan all across Europe.
Okay.
Poor Sally. I once paid to get in to hear her lecturing on the utility of PISO urine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and do you know what they used it for in the laundry?
Go on.
To get rid of the greasy spots on your clothing, and that's why I was asking about the mosaics that your wife...
Greek spot.
So Sally Magnusson, she wrote a book called The Utility of Urine, and that is the PISO piss take, because she knows she's descended in the family bloodline, and there are only 1 or 2 generations that have Magnus on it, but that is the kings and queens of Sweden, and that is the biggest killers in the war. And I've met a body double for the king of Sweden, who's Gustav, and he smokes the PISO pipe like Harold Wilson and all the usual suspects. His brother was killed in an air crash when he was returning from his meeting with Bilderberg and the fascist that is Bernhard of the Netherlands. And he told me that he was using the same airports as the dead elder brother, and all of it is just, I call those acts of God now, and all of it is called by them accidents, but none of them see it coming. So McGuiness died within 6 weeks of me making that very explicit video and showing the pictures of him and his likenesses to Marcus Aurelius in the ancient Roman busts. Yeah, and that is your Irish terror exemplified. All of them are in it entirely for profit. So the Fotheringay now own the Lochleven mansion that was owned by Montgomery, and that is Montanus PISO, the mountain to the molehill. And the Montgomerys are the Dukes of Buccleuch, they are the Earls of Douglas, that's the Black Douglases, the Red Douglases, and every religious battle have the same families massacring the poor people as they stand in their dinner gear at the top of the hill. Yeah, and that for Bruce in the Braveheart movie is him sitting next to Longshanks, yeah, as his second in command. And those folk are now coming to meet me. The person that asked Robert the Bruce to do the right thing for the king, aka kill William Wallace, his family are now talking to me on the buses. But I will not tell you. I will not tell you the name, because that is, you know, all of it. They would love us to have us, ripping each other's throats out in the name of Jesus or Muhammad or whatever it is that you want to massacre for. Yeah. And they get away with that all of the time, and Ireland is a massive victim. So tell your guys that are keen to get me to explain the gods that Arius Piso, who faked up the whole of the Bible, riled up the gods, and every volcano that erupts around the world, which is why Nicola Sturgeon has one looking down on her Parliament building.
Right.
Yeah, that's the caldera that is Holyrood, and it looks down on the Queen's palace that Queen Mary was entitled to be the Queen of, but she never got the chance because the Fotheringhays and the syndicate that is the murderous launch of false religion in every one of the denominations. That's why the weather storms occur all over the world, and the gods that do that, I don't know whether you can believe in a deity that can be in the Philippines and can be in Mexico. Both of those still use the Piso currency, and that's why they get the massive weather storms, and that's why the capital city is called Bonifacio, because all of it is in the billionaire syndicate for Oprah Winfrey.
Right.
So that might be a little bit over their heads.
Okay.
But tell them I want to be buried in New Zealand and that they'll have to pay the costs.
Listen, I wanted to ask you, and I've been wanting to ask you for a while. You've spoken often about David Cameron and many other prime ministers over the years. Where does Theresa May fit in? Where does she come from?
So she's von Brazier of Austria.
Okay.
And have you seen my video on the Habsburg chins?
I have, yes.
That has actually driven the whole of the city of Dundee and all of the provincial places into a state of panic, because almost everybody has got Habsburg chins. Everywhere I drink, every bus I'm on, all of them have got it. And that is the diaspora in 1919. They were stripped of their titles unless they were impresarios. That is why ABBA, who are von ABBA, are still entitled to wear those bizarre clothes that they wear, because in Austria, if you're an impresario and you wear a uniform like a conductor would, so that is von, I forget what his name, von Gardner, and he's the famous conductor of all those massive operas, but ABBA wear the gear because they get tax breaks for it. And they are von ABBA of Austria, and that is the piss-take that they are the Father God, because ABBA means the Father God. And that's why the video that is Andante Andante, it used to call them von ABBA on the pink thumbnail for that video. It's completely been removed from world history, and that is the weather storms. When you get an ABBA storm warning, that is Police Scotland's message that you're going to have a blizzard, and that is because the Father God creates the blizzard.
But were ABBA not made, now I know you say it means the Father God, but were ABBA not the name derived from their first letters of each name? Agatha, Bjarni, Bjorg, you know.
Well, that's the cover for it, but why did they win the Eurovision Song Contest singing about Waterloo and grinning like Cheshire cats? Yeah, all of them are on the Rothschild payroll, and all of it is a piss-take and becomes poetry and art, and all of that is everything that is in the social media and everything that appears when I make new videos on new themes, and when I start making interviews with you, there's an England player in the team, and all. Yeah, and every night you can pick them off just like that. And even when I'm just making a video in my own home, because they're surveilling it. I'm going to get booted out soon. If you can find any friendly wenches in Ireland, I'd love to have a go. Do I need a passport?
I don't think you do, but you might as well use one if you have.
All right. Well, keep a look for the village women.
I would. you come out and have a look yourself.
But yeah, it's. I'm living with the Forbes, and when they had I discovered that there's a Mr. and Mrs. Thailand on the Rothschild family tree, and that weekend they had the floods in the tunnels that nearly killed the school kids. You remember it?
I do remember that, yeah.
Yeah, and all of it. Yeah, I create the news in this living room every day of the week, and you're part of it now. And that video we made, the one where I was able, when we spill over into the period where my video making has run out, this one's got virtually no pictures because I didn't get enough time to prepare them. But I've forgotten what I was going to tell you. Yeah, just all the news that comes through here. You remember me telling you about why was the launch of Christopher Columbus into America? Why is that a piss take? And you did not know, and you asked me why is that? He sailed from Christopher Columbus sailed from Genoa, and that night in Genoa they had a bridge collapse.
Okay, so I mean I understand the concept of you being the centre of your universe and creator, etc., and me being the centre of my universe and everyone being the centre of each other's universe. But does that
not because we're a menace to the real owners of the universe, who have replaced the gods even in that universe.
Okay.
Yeah, they are now, all of them are descendants of Piso. And all of it is absolutely unbelievable, but that is why George W. Bush wags the Piso pistol in all his images, and it's the same all in the world. It's the naming of the polis, it's the naming of the prisons and the pistols, and all the steeplechases are the steeples for the churches, and that's the Piso horse, and that's the horseshoe. And every town I moved through in the Kingdom of Fife last night, which is the joke about Scotland ever having its own monarch.
Right.
Yeah, all of it. So that is, there's a place in Fife called Falkland, and the folk that run the pub opposite the mansion where all the claimants become beheaded claimants. Yeah, in the lead up to that. The church opposite is run by Tyndall, Reverend Tyndall, and all of it is the families that marry into the royals, and that is the Fotheringays that were looking after the women in what became the palace for Montgomery. And that is right back into the Piso pen, and on it goes. And the Dukes and Duchesses of Dalkeith are Bowes Lions too, and Dalkeith is a tiny little town on the outskirts of Edinburgh, and all the palaces are hidden behind the woods. And we could not find the Bowes Lion or the Ogilvie palaces because all of them are official secrets since the Rothschild bastards were sired and Greg Hallett was killed for it.
Right. And so this
tell me more about the new Greg Hallett that would not eventually make the interview with you.
Well, what did you just say then? Because I cut across you then, George. What did you say?
So I thought you said that the new Greg Hallett had backed out of an interview with you. Did you say that you'd given him one?
I said that I'd offered him an interview, and his answer to me was that he didn't want to come on a show where me and three geeks would be listening.
Ah, right.
That was his answer. He said he doesn't realise that, like, if I looked at my, I told you last month that it was 18,500 people come on my website each month,
Yeah.
Well, that's gone up by 1,000.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's just my website. That's not people that listen to it on Healing Oracle. That's not people that listen to it on People's Internet Radio, etc. So there's more than that.
And could you, as a favour, put one of mine on? If you were to put George Lees's Last Breath video on and let them see with the images all the stuff that stunned you about loaves and fishes and things. Yeah, it's all of that was published on the Angel Fire website or the Totsi websites, and they've just become pornography events.
Right, what a shame.
And I think you've seen my videos with Hillary Clinton and stuff, and that is, all of them just demean themselves so that the family can keep stealing from the world and launch their senior members into the police or the judiciary, and all of it is tragic. All of us are now educated, are able to speak several languages, and all of it can be broadcast worldwide, but that is a menace to the powers that be that have been there for 2,000 years, and all of them are named after Piso.
Right.
Yeah.
Listen, George, we've got just under 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure that you are able to get into this recording everything that you wish to.
So let me explain the Royal Slaving Company.
Yeah.
And the Carolina. Let me see if I can find it. It's just that I did not get enough time to prepare the places that.
Now we're doing this off the cuff. I mean, it is only midday now.
So the RAC in England, everybody knows, is the Royal Automobile Club.
Right.
In global history, the RAC is the Royal African Company, and their product is slaving. That's why they cut down my internet access. The night that I discovered that was the night that we were going to make the interview, and I did not show up because I could not get back on the internet. And I had 5 gigabytes when I started making the video that was given an upload and has now been downloaded again or written off, and that is what I've published on the front page of my Facebook page this morning. So they are running the slaves into South Carolina, where in the last few weeks they have had terrible tornadoes and weather storms, and I don't know how the gods synchronize their activity, but every volcanic eruption and every weather storm, and so I'm being moved out of the house now by the man who's called Forbes that lives in Thailand. But let me just see if I can find the so RAC slavings. So Charles I and Charles II were the first of the royals in Britain, and they were in power, I think, largely as just children. Yeah, and that is the into the scene come the Tudors and the popes, and that's why Tudor wanted to behead all of his wives, Henry VIII,
right,
because they could not bear male children, so that his lineage could continue.
okay.
And there's the South Carolinian Carolingian tabs, and let me just get for my audience the RAC slaving images.
Okay.
So that is I forget the name. I think the name of the city, the Carolina, is based on Charlemagne again, and so there is the motto for the state of South Carolina is Dum Spero Spiro, with the word Piso in it twice. Yeah.
Where is Where is that?
Sorry, it's on my camera now.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
Yeah, and there is So and the literal meaning of Dum Spero Spiro is breathe, I hope, because the Pisos know that there are gods, and the whole of their lifespan is determined by those gods. And so the storms occurred, but there's the RAC slaving tab now on my screen. And
unfortunately, my listeners won't see that.
Well, so what Jim Fetzer does is when we're making videos, he points his camera at the thingy, and he can somehow or other archive the Skype output. But there's
I have no camera, so I can't.
There's the Royal African Company on the left image on my screen now, and it's got an elephant with a castle on its back, and that is the naming of the suburb in London called Elephant and Castle. And do you know all about the takeover of Asia and the 200 years Opium War?
Well, I know some of it, yes.
So that is the early days of Queen Victoria, in inverted commas, and that is the Rothschilds' deal. That is Sassoon, who later married into their family, and the person who signed the signatory was, for a laugh, called Ellie Poo.
Okay.
Yeah, the Rothschilds are ever so humorous in everything they steal, including my heart. She's never showed up again. Okay, so there is the royal icon for the Royal Automobile Club, which is really the cover for the Royal African Slaving Company. And let me just show you how they put the slaves in the boats. It was not a comfortable cruise. Most of them died in squalor and in their own shit. And that's why we've got black men in the news accused of raping people in their political history last night. Yeah, I forget what his name is, but it's all the same stories. And
I didn't see it, I'm afraid, but yeah.
You were bemused by Weinstein the other week and the raping of Gwyneth Paltrow. It's just massive. Yeah, she's related to Pope Benedict, and she is a Jewess, and all of them are related to Rothschild.
Well, on that bombshell, I think we'll bring this to a close, George. Is there anything you want to say just before we go?
So there's a couple of Roman coins, and all of that money that is coming in for the British Royals. It's taken me nearly 2 weeks to get that video published, and that's why I've published the censorship issues on my Facebook page this morning, and hopefully they will prick up their ears and pay attention. But the whole of the media output, Rupert Murdoch has been defeated in a law court action yesterday. Now they are beginning to quake, because you've got how many audience? How big is your audience?
Well, I mean, I don't know how big my audience is. I know that on my website I get about 19,500 people coming on there every month.
Wow.
Is that good? I don't know.
So have a look at George Lees's YouTube video on his last breath, and if you could, just pop it in there as a favour.
What, pop it into the podcast?
Just load it into your web page.
I don't know how to do that. I mean, I'll have to talk to you off air about that, George.
All right.
And, let you know what I can do. I can put it into the podcast, of course, but
so there is a 1686 guinea, a coin for Britain, showing the company's symbol, an elephant and castle under the bust of James II. That is wee James, who died at the age of 22, and I think that's why Taylor Swift sings about that as one of the American presidential bloodlines. And on and on and on it goes. And she's the biggest sinner of the lot, because she understands the vagina joke, which is why she made the legendary Shake It Off song. Shall we stop there?
Yeah, we'll stop there.
Nothing like a bit of smut to keep your audience interested.
Professor Check out Taylor Swift. Professor George Lees, thank you so much for coming out of the bag. This will be hopefully put out on the 3rd of October.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks for.
Codename Slaves to the King. Cheers.
Okay, that's done, George. I don't know how to put. I do.